The story begins with a man named Phil, who is traveling alone by car from one city to another. He carries a map, and each time he leaves a city, he marks a cross over its name. The roads around him are completely deserted. The entire world appears lifeless. 2 years ago, a virus wiped out humanity, and now, Phil believes he's the only one left. He travels endlessly in search of another human being, a partner. But despite visiting almost every city, he hasn't found anyone. Phil has a habit of collecting something special from each city he visits. He also leaves a message behind in every city. I'm in Tucson. If anyone is alive and reading this, come to Tucson to meet me. After leaving his message, he returns to his city, Tucson. Since there's no one else around, Phil chooses the biggest house in the city as his home. He decorates it with priceless paintings he's taken, because now, there's no one to stop him. He lives exactly how he wants, doing whatever comes to mind. To cope with the loneliness, Phil has even made some friends out of footballs, drawing faces on them and talking to them as if they're real people. But after 5 months, Phil becomes extremely frustrated. His house is a complete mess, more like a junkyard. Life feels meaningless. In despair, he decides to crash his car into a huge rock to end it all. But just as he's about to do it, he sees smoke rising in the distance. He immediately realizes if there's smoke, someone must be there. Now, Phil wasn't just looking for anyone. He was hoping to find a woman, someone to fulfill his emotional and personal needs. Following the smoke, he reaches the source and sees clothes drying. He gets so excited at the thought of finally meeting someone that he faints on the spot. When he opens his eyes, he sees a woman standing before him. At first glance, he thinks she's young and beautiful. But when he regains full consciousness, he realizes she's actually an older lady. Disappointed, he listens as she introduces herself. Her name is Carol. Carol explains that she saw his message in several cities and came to Tucson to meet him. Phil takes her to his home, but she's shocked to see that he has turned it into a chaotic junkyard. She also notices the paintings he has collected, clearly stolen. Carol is not impressed. She tells Phil this behavior is wrong, but Phil simply replies, "There's no one else in the world. We can do whatever we want." Frustrated, Carol leaves. But the next morning, when Phil wakes up, he's surprised to see Carol cleaning his house. This sparks an argument between them. Their personalities clash, and they start fighting frequently. Their thoughts, lifestyles, and values don't match at all. Phil complains about her to one of his ball friends, saying she always interferes and that he doesn't like her. Things escalate when Carol moves into the house next door, bringing all her belongings with her. Phil tries to stop her, but she ignores him. Carol, who lives in a more organized and refined manner, wants to start a garden beside her house where tomatoes are already planted. She approaches Phil, asking for water to help her plants grow, but Phil flatly refuses. In response, Carol eats a fresh tomato in front of him to mock him. Angered, Phil sneaks into her garden at night and eats all the tomatoes. The next morning, Carol confronts him, saying, "You ate my tomatoes." Phil denies it, even though tomato juice is smeared on his face and clothes. As Carol limps away, Phil realizes she hurt her leg while trying to fetch water. Feeling guilty, he turns on the water pump to help irrigate her garden. That night, Carol invites him to dinner. During dinner, she shares a thought. Maybe God kept both of us alive so we can repopulate the world. We need to have children. Hearing this, Phil becomes excited and agrees. But Carol tells him she can't do that unless they're married. Phil agrees to marry her and heads to a church. He uses a voice recording with wedding vows to conduct the ceremony. But he forgets one important thing, a wedding ring. Carol becomes upset and leaves. Feeling regretful, Phil visits her home to apologize. He sees that she had made beautiful wedding preparations, and he feels ashamed. He sincerely apologizes and takes her to a jewelry store, letting her choose as many rings as she likes. Finally, they get married. However, despite the marriage, Phil is not happy. Deep down, he had always dreamed of having a beautiful wife, someone far more attractive than himself. But Phil didn't get the kind of life partner he had dreamed of. Still, he and Carol continued exploring cities together. One day, their car collided with another vehicle, but thankfully, neither of them was hurt. Phil rushed out, and to his amazement, a beautiful young woman stepped out of the other car. Her name was Melissa. Now that their car was broken, Melissa offered them a lift. During the drive, Phil couldn't take his eyes off her. She was exactly the kind of woman he had always dreamed of, not Carol, but Melissa. On the way, Carol told Melissa that she and Phil were married. Phil didn't like that at all. Melissa later decided to live in their neighborhood. Hearing this, Phil was thrilled. He tried to talk to her constantly and impress her with his words, but Carol always interrupted. Still, Phil didn't stop. Determined to win Melissa's attention, he shaved off the beard he had been growing for months. But when he showed up clean-shaven, neither Carol nor Melissa liked the look. Still, Phil kept trying. He began working out in front of her just to show off, but Melissa didn't seem impressed. Instead, she asked about a car Phil had brought for her. Meanwhile, Carol invited Melissa over and showed her a hand-drawn wedding album she'd created. Melissa admired it. She revealed that her previous husband had cheated on her, which is why she left him. Melissa despised dishonesty. The next day, Melissa invited both Phil and Carol for dinner. But Carol was out, and Phil lied to Melissa, saying Carol wasn't feeling well and that he would come alone. At dinner, during their conversation, Melissa said something that lit a fire inside Phil. "If you were single, maybe we could have been in a relationship." Hearing this, Phil's hidden desires reignited. He rushed home, planning to divorce Carol. But when he saw her making a beautiful frame for their wedding album, he couldn't bring himself to say anything. Still, he didn't give up. He told Carol, "Maybe God kept us alive to repopulate the earth. For that, I need to be with Melissa." Though Carol was clearly against the idea, she gave in. Together, they convinced Melissa, and finally, it was decided. Phil and Melissa would spend the night together. Phil, overjoyed, prepared for the special moment. As they walked toward the outdoor bed, suddenly, a car pulled up. Out stepped a chubby man with a thick mustache. His name was Todd. Phil's entire plan fell apart. Melissa greeted Todd warmly, and soon, everyone was sitting together, listening to Todd's stories. Melissa seemed very interested in him, which made Phil extremely uncomfortable. He began mocking Todd's weight, but Todd calmly explained that he used to be fit, until the death of his parents led to stress, depression, and emotional eating. Melissa felt sympathy for Todd. Meanwhile, Phil's plan was in ruins once again. The next morning, everyone planned a date. But Carol faked being sick to stop Phil from joining, so Todd and Melissa went alone. They had a wonderful time together. Phil, hiding in the bushes, watched in burning jealousy. Determined to win Melissa over, Phil invited everyone to play tennis. At the tennis court, Phil deliberately took off his shirt, then asked Todd to do the same, just to humiliate him. Todd complied, revealing a scar on his stomach. When Melissa asked about it, Todd explained that he had donated a kidney to his brother, but sadly, he couldn't save him. Getting emotional, Todd walked away and Melissa followed. Once again, Phil's plan was destroyed. Watching the two of them fall in love, Phil grew bitter and angry. Even Carol was happy for them. Still, Phil made one last attempt to turn Melissa against Todd. But Melissa now truly loved Todd. She scolded Phil, and he finally realized the mistake he had made. The next morning, he went to apologize to Melissa, but deep down, he still wanted to separate her from Todd. That night, loud music blasted from Todd's house. Phil couldn't sleep. He knew what was happening. Todd and Melissa were getting closer, physically and emotionally. The next day, when Phil asked Todd about it, Todd admitted everything had happened between him and Melissa. Phil's dreams were completely shattered. In a desperate move, Phil invited Todd for a drive. Using a false excuse, he drove him far from the city and left him there. But on his way back, guilt began to eat away at him. What if Todd died? Regretfully, Phil returned, picked Todd up, and brought him back. Todd thought it was all just a joke. He had no idea Phil's real plan was to abandon him. Everyone, including God, saw Phil as a good man, but deep down, his intentions were still selfish. Now, Phil had only one mission: to earn praise from Carol and Melissa, the same kind of admiration they always gave to Todd. One day, Phil found a cow wandering the road and brought it home. Everyone was amazed, but none of them knew how to milk it. Todd stepped in, saying he had learned on his uncle's farm. He milked the cow successfully, impressing everyone yet again. The praise, once again, went to Todd instead of Phil. Phil couldn't hide his frustration. One day, the cow wandered into Carol's house. Though Phil and Carol were married, they now lived in separate homes. Carol, annoyed by the intrusion, moved back in with Phil. Living under the same roof reignited their old arguments and tension. One day, Carol asked Phil to go fetch supplies. On the way, Phil saw two young women walking toward him. They had seen one of Phil's old messages and come to the city. Phil, stunned by their beauty, didn't tell them about Carol, Melissa, or Todd. He lied, claiming he was alone. The girls invited him to dinner at their house. Phil, now thrilled, returned home and told Carol he was going camping. She didn't suspect a thing. Wearing his best suit and boots, Phil went to the girls' house and had dinner with them. Feeling lucky, he joined them on a long drive. Meanwhile, Carol had dinner with Todd and Melissa. She casually mentioned that Phil had gone camping, but Melissa was suspicious. Todd tried to defend Phil, saying he once took him far away, but came back for him. They decided to surprise Phil. Driving around, they spotted a car, realizing someone else must be alive. Then they met the same two girls, and behind them, hiding in the car, was Phil. The truth came out. Carol, Melissa, and Todd were furious. Phil had lied, again. All 5 of them left him behind and drove away. Phil walked home all night. By morning, he returned to find everyone talking and laughing without him. He tried to join the conversation, but no one wanted to listen. Finally, overwhelmed by guilt, Phil confessed everything that had been on his heart. But Carol was already done with him. After everything that happened, Phil was finally free from relationships, from expectations, and from heartbreak. But just when he thought he could move on, a new person arrived after seeing Phil's message. His name was also Phil, but to avoid confusion, everyone began calling him Phil Miller, or just Miller. Miller had an amazing personality, charming, helpful, and good-looking. Everyone was immediately impressed by him. The 2 new girls, Todd and even Carol, began spending more time with him. Phil couldn't stand it. No one trusted him anymore, and now, all attention was on Miller. Miller started solving everyone's problems. He even managed to remove the cow from Carol's house, something no one else had been able to do. Phil knew he had to keep Miller in check. Jealous and protective, he invited Miller to stay at his home, hoping to keep him away from the girls. But when Miller took off his shirt, Phil was stunned by his muscular body. Feeling insecure, he decided to work out too. But a great physique doesn't happen overnight. One of the new girls even mocked Phil's body, making him feel worse. Meanwhile, Melissa helped Miller clean up garbage, which led to an argument between her and Todd. Everyone was drawn to Miller's confidence and kindness. They began giving him gifts, but Miller accepted only Carol's. This made her feel special. Later that night, everyone sat around a campfire. Phil tried to reclaim some authority. He declared, "I was the first one here. I left messages for everyone. I brought us together. So I should be the leader, the president." But the group decided to hold a vote. Unsurprisingly, the girls voted for Miller, and he was officially declared the new leader. This made Phil furious. One night, he heard Carol's voice coming from Miller's room. Devastated, he stepped outside and found Todd already sitting there, equally disturbed. Todd knew Melissa had feelings for Miller, and now both men felt completely replaced. Frustrated, Phil proposed a plan to Todd. They would abandon Miller far away so he could never return. But Todd suddenly remembered something. Phil had once done the same to him. He realized that it hadn't been a joke back then. Phil had truly tried to get rid of him. Hurt and angry, Todd walked away. The next day, Miller told Phil he was moving out. He'd be living with Carol now. That news broke Phil from the inside. At that moment, he realized something important. He loved Carol. She was the only one who had ever truly understood him. Trying to win her back, Phil brought her flowers. But Carol refused. She didn't trust him anymore. That night, the group gathered again, and Carol revealed that Miller had created electricity. There had been no power all this time, but Miller had built a solar-powered light bulb. When he showed it to the group, everyone was amazed. But Phil, in a fit of envy, smashed the bulb and pretended it was an accident. Nobody bought the excuse. Miller, now the group's official leader, made a bold decision. Phil is no longer welcome here. He must leave the city. Phil rushed home, locked all the doors, and barricaded himself inside with furniture. Carol came to his door, trying to talk him out of it, but he refused. Later, Phil heard singing outside. Curious, he opened the door and found everyone singing for him. He thought they had forgiven him and was about to smile when Miller knocked him unconscious from behind. Phil woke up tied to a vehicle. Miller was driving. He took Phil far, far away into a remote desert-like area with steep ravines and left him there. Before driving off, he left him food and water for 3 days and warned, "If you try to come back to Tucson, it won't end well." Now completely alone, Phil struggled. His food ran out. He grew weak and hopeless. But just as he was on the verge of collapse, a car approached, and Carol stepped out. She had come to check on him and bring food. Seeing Phil in such a miserable state, her heart broke. And that's when Phil finally realized Carol was his true love all along. Carol, too, had come to a decision. She told Phil, "I don't want to stay with Miller. He's not the kind of person I can live with. If he can do this to you, he can do it to anyone." She chose to stay with Phil. And so, the two of them, finally reunited, set off on a new, unknown journey in the very car Carol had used to find him. And with that, the story ends. So that's it. Hope you enjoy the story. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more videos.